Kia ora, I'm Martin Hodge. I'm the new entrance teacher at Hutt Central School, which is a Decile 8 school in Lower Hutt. For the purposes of this filming exercise, I'm using a group of children from my new entrance class. All these children started school during term 1 of this year. I think for a long time people have thought of PE as just being a physical activity, but it's far more than that. It's about thinking, it's about working as a team, so it's cooperation, and of course it's the physical skills as well. The physical skills that are needed within the classroom, managing themselves in reading, writing, maths, and all the other arts and crafts activities that we do in the daily curriculum. I see that physical literacy, when we're doing a PE lesson, needs to encompass all these things. So we're talking about how they think, how they're going to cooperate as a team, how they are going to move, and how that is going to link back into their classroom learning. When a new entrance child starts school, I look at them and I think, now what does this child need to be able to do to learn at school and to access the curriculum? For a majority of 5-year-olds, they're needing to develop their fine motor skills, their core body skills, and their ability to have the stamina to hold their bodies in a centered position for learning. It's very hard to learn to read if you're rolling around because the book doesn't roll with you. And likewise, when you're writing, if you can't hold your body in a centered position for focusing in on the paper or whatever it is you're writing on, and you're rolling around or falling off your chair, then it's very hard to find that a rewarding activity and to keep focused on it. So within my classroom, as part of the literacy program, before we start any writing at all, we have 2 aspects of exercise. First, the exercises is focusing in on centering their bodies, so the activities where they have to center their bodies and hold their bodies. We may hold ourselves in a position and count to 5. And then we'll extend that and push it out to counting to 10, pushing it out, counting to 20. It was very interesting at the beginning of the year, the number of children who could not hold themselves long in a standing position for longer than counting to 2. So if that's the way you're holding yourself, just in a regular standing or sitting position, it's going to be very hard for you to learn to read or write. So that's one of the aspects of my program. The other aspect that I have is developing their fine motor skills in their hands, and that's working on their hands using squeezy balls, dough, sticks or pegs. Develop these hands here so that they can hold a pencil. So I found that with SportStart program that actually built on to the program that I was already operating into the classroom. SportStart fitted in very well with what I was doing, and it gave me a chance to develop my program further than I perhaps would have done. One of the advantages of the SportStart program is you do come with a complete package of lesson plans. But when I look at the lesson plans, I think about, now what do the children need to be able to do this activity? And for example, with truck and trailer, they needed to be able to work with a partner. So that's why I started off with the children walking around with the trailer, putting their hands on the shoulders of the truck, so that those 2 children could identify that they were a team and they needed to work together and who the person was that we're working with. The instructions don't tell you to do that, but that's how I believe that the children needed to learn to be a team before they could actually manage that activity. Other modifications that I have made to the program is look at what equipment do we need and what is my workspace. In the activity of dynamos, I realised that I needed to get a form together, and though I had one, it was my lunch hour and I was busy and I was running out of time. So I looked around the playground and I thought, yes, there's a step that we can use there that will work well, and there's actually an edging to the adventure playground that will work well for this activity, because before the children can do this activity well, they actually need to be able to hold themselves in a balanced position, and these 2 pieces of equipment already in the playground will actually meet that need. I also thought that if I was using playground equipment that's already out here, the children might actually use the equipment just in their free time or at playtime, or may adopt to do similar balancing type activities as part of their playtime games. I look at how they're going to fit in with the children, the needs they're going to address, and some activities address the needs of my class more than others, so I have focused in on those activities more. The jumping sequence has fitted in particularly well with the needs of the children, as it requires a lot of centering and a lot of balance and a lot of remembering of instructions, and so that has been a particularly useful one to do. Domes and dishes is a fun activity, the children enjoy that, and we've been able to make it more challenging by getting the children to start to work as a team, to work out a plan as to how they're going to cooperate and play the game together. And of course you're prompting them and you are praising them when they come up with a new and different strategy from something you might have suggested, because when they're suggesting things that you have suggested, they're just parroting back, but when they can start inventing their own thoughts, then that's when you know that you're really starting to win. I started the year off with 13 children in the room, and that's when we joined the SportStart program with Georgina. During the first term my class increased to 20, and then during term 2 my class has increased to 30. So that makes your teaching dynamics change quite a lot. Certainly it was very manageable following the planning when I had a smaller class up to about 20, but once we got to a bigger class, of course everything takes a lot longer. So I had to look at the plans and I had to think, now what do the children really need to do? What are the most important aspects of this, and what activities can we do, get together really quickly, which means that they're not having to sit around waiting for equipment to be put out. So activities like the jumping sequence worked really well for them because they were familiar with some of the steps that we had done in the classroom. So it was building on to classroom work, and we could use our time far more efficiently. And because it was a fast activity, they were getting their turns quickly, and it was a reasonably controlled activity too, so that they were not infringing on other people's space. A game like Domes and Dishes meant that with a big crowd of children, it means that there's more people bumping into each other, and they become less aware of space and how they fit into that space. Another thing that I had to change was I couldn't use the dome or the cones as much as I had wanted to with the smaller group, because they have a sort of a bit of a suction on them, which makes it harder and slower for little fingers to pull those domes apart. So I had to stop using them, but of course with a bigger group, the boundaries of the hall were an appropriate boundary to use. I perhaps didn't have that need to have such a defined area as I had done with a smaller group. Everything, as I say, once you get a big class, takes longer, so perhaps instead of doing 3 or 4 activities, I had to be prepared that it was okay to be doing 2 activities. The most important thing was that we were keeping regular PE, that the physical activity was still going, and that we weren't giving up just because the class was big, and because we had different abilities too, because we had children who'd started at the beginning of the year who were very familiar with the activities and whose skills were developing, and I was bringing in children who had started during term 2, and of course their physical abilities and their stability and their means of centering themselves were a lot more fragile. So we had to accommodate that too, and so to do that I had to think of how was I going to do this, and which activities were going to cater for all needs of children in the room. And I think teachers need to be prepared to do this. Don't abandon it. Look at how you can accommodate it in your situation with the space that you've got. In the summer we were able to be outside a lot more, and that became harder when you have a bigger group and the weather's not so good, but it is possible. I think it's also important to set ground rules before you leave the classroom too. And you have to be firm on keeping these ground rules for children's safety and for the effectiveness of the lesson. I've learned new activities that I can do. I've learned that these activities are simple, that they don't require a lot of equipment. I have learned that children can take more ownership of their PE. I guess I've come through my training over a lot of years that PE was very much the teacher got the equipment out and the children did it. That's changed, and it's good to see that the children are problem solving and are able to take on this ownership. And it saves me work if they can put the cones out and put the spots out. They're thinking, and as they're putting that out, they are learning to think about how is this game going to work. I have learned that I can question the children a lot more and ask them, well, what went well, what didn't go well, what could they do better, what do they need to change before we can do the activity. So I guess one of the big learning curves for me is involving the children a lot more in the organisation of PE. It doesn't just have to be what the teacher does, children can do it, and especially the older children, they can take a lot more control in organising the equipment. My PE slots mean that I need to be organising equipment at lunchtime and having it ready to go as soon as the lesson starts at 1:30. So if I've got the children trained up to have this set up ready to go, or set up within a minute or two of getting into the hall, that means we have less time wasted in organising our resources. That's been a very useful thing for me to do. It's been useful having the lesson plans set out for me, and though I regard the lesson plans as a guide, not as something I necessarily need to follow, but for some people they are something that they need to follow, and that's good too, because if that's going to help you do PE, perfect, then do it. But if you can question it and if you can think about how you're going to adapt it, then that's also very useful. And for me, I'm the sort of person that does question and see how they can fit my teaching style. So I've learnt to do that a lot, be a lot more reflective about my PE, a lot more reflective about the activities I can do, and a lot more reflective about how I'm going to use the equipment, what equipment I'm going to use, and how long is it going to take me to get it organised. The activities I do in the classroom are for individuals. So by following the SportStart program, they've been able to take those strengthening and core development activities and use them in the SportStart program, but they're doing it as a team, either with a buddy or working in a team. So it's just built on what I'm doing in the classroom and taking it into a team situation. And I always remind the children, I've got several of them who play tinny ball, and that these are skills that you're going to need in tinny ball. If you're being a part of a team in the classroom, you actually are also going to be part of a team in tinny ball. This is helping you to be a better team member. I would recommend it. I think it's a very useful program, and the advantages I have found is that I have been working with a structured program that developmentally progresses not just within my classroom but across the school. So the skills that I'm developing here are being developed in the middle school and the senior school. So for me, SportStart is a smart choice for all teachers.